everyone. My name is Alexis Miller, and I'm an engagement specialist at Solar United Neighbors. So I cover 6 of our state programs, working on our volunteerism and events and engagement in those 6 states, and DC being one of those. So I'm super excited to be here with y'all and see some faces from last time and get to meet more of you guys as we continue working together.
Chris? You're on the next one on my screen.
That's okay. It's a Brady Bunch kind of thing. Hi, my name is Benjamin Randolph. For those of you who don't know me, I work at the DC Public Service Commission. A lot of your faces are very familiar. I work in community outreach, and we have been having these great conversations regarding community energy affordability, solar, renewable energy, consumer services, and rate equity. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you for giving me this time to speak, and love having more conversation with all of you.
Ron?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ron Bethea. I'm the founder of the Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative. And what we do, we work with solar and renewable energy companies. We put together a program called Solar Now and the Future with its Economic Impact on Black America, a podcast that we've been producing for 4 years. We've had over 20,000 people to listen to the show, and we've been able to do a lot of advocacy work nationally, and we're working on rolling out a new organization called the National Association of Blacks in Solar, which will be rolling out during the Congressional Black Caucus virtual session. So if anyone would like to get any more information on our organization, you can go to positivechangepc.com. And I had the privilege of, as of yesterday, I had Mrs. Kimberly Armstrong, who's the Maryland Director for Neighborhoods United. And last week we had an interview with Mr. Tom Deo, who's the executive officer for the Green Bank of Montgomery County. And those are very good interviews, and I would recommend people can go there and click on our gallery, and we produced about 166 shows. So it's a lot. We have a wealth of information under our news and events tab.
Thank you, Ron. Nina.
Hi, I'm Nina Dodge. Great to see everybody. And I'm with DC Climate Action. Our involvement with solar right now is on a very, very specific issue, which is in the interconnection policy domain. And it's really getting smart inverters, the new advanced inverters deployed in such a way as to align with our goals for solar carve-out in DC and decarbonization in 2032 and 2050. So I'm
going to have to excuse myself for a second. I'm doing some other cooking outside. So.
Oh, wow. Well, you'll have to let us know what you're cooking.
Thanks, Ron.
Yeah. Anyway, so on the policy side, and I'm considering solar for my house, and but I'm also waiting right now for a permit to drill for ground source heat pump, geothermal heat. So I don't know. I hope I'll get it. Have to see.
Maurice, is it?
Yes, it is. Thank you. I'm Maurice Smith. I'm with the Public Service Commission, Office of Consumer Services. I'm here tonight as a guest of Chris Randolph, who's a team member who's been nudging me and our job to get involved in solar and what's going on in the solar world for a few years. And so we're just trying to expand our outreach, and I'm happy to be a part of this meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Nick?
So is that the Aurora Borealis behind you?
I don't know. It's some kind of, I've got so many strange things going on in my basement. I didn't want to expose to it.
Yeah. Usually surroundings too. I'm visiting my parents up in Jericho, Vermont. So I'm in my childhood bedroom here. Not my office, my normal setting. I've been here for a couple of weeks and will be here through the end of September, kind of escaping the DC heat. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everything just froze up on me.
The video
Yeah, you're
froze,
frozen, but we
hear
can still hear you.
We can see you too. Watch out.
And I think we lost him
Yeah,
for a second. So I'll move on. David?
I'm David Rudman. I live in DC, and I've had a solar on my roof for about 10 years.
Hi, sorry.
It's okay. Do you want to
hear me?
continue?
Yeah.
We learned that you were in your childhood
Nope.
home. No, I guess he's not ready. I'll finish. I have, for most of my adult life, done research and writing on many different issues relating to public policy, some environmental issues, some not. And as we'll discuss, I picked a fight and pursued a change in the regulations that raises the limit on the size of net metering systems in DC.
You're a hero.
We could talk about that.
Nick, go ahead. If you want to finish, or did you freeze up again?
Yeah.
Looks like Nick is having some internet connection. So Jackie?
Hi, I'm Jackie. I'm a DC resident. I have been in DC now for 20 years, but I bought my home about 10 years ago, 12 years ago now. And I happened to work for a school that did platinum LEED renovation, one of the first in the country. We had a lot of tours. I was giving a lot of tours and realized some of the stuff translates well for your house. So I first looked into green roofs, and then I found that they're doing the solar. And, you know, we've been renovating. This house was in shambles when we bought it. So we're to the point where we could do something on the roof. So I'm just exploring green options.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining us. Jenna?
Hi, I'm Gina Williams. I'm a DC resident, born and raised. Kind of on the tails of Jackie, I've just been doing a lot of research lately to find out more information in regards to solar options as a DC resident. So, you know, very interested and appreciative to be able to join tonight just to get a little more insight around this initiative.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Carrie?
Turn on the video now. I had it turned off because my wife was running back and forth to the laundry since my office is in the basement, and the video still hasn't started. In any case, I'll go forward. It says it can't start the video. Oh well, malfunction. As some of you know, I'm director of the Office of External Affairs for the Public Service Commission. We were created approximately a year ago. I have a staff of 2 that primarily work on media relations and social media. And I primarily work on, besides managing them, work on stakeholder relations, including the DC Council, executive branch agencies, federal government, other large, shall we say, national organizations like NARUC and so on, as well as DC-based groups. And since we're in kind of the AA mode, I have 28 solar panels on my roof, and I've had them for about 12 years.
Wow.
Love that. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm going to confess, I am the DC director, but I actually live right out of the district in Capitol Heights, Maryland, which we lovingly refer to as Ward 9. Because, yeah. But I do have solar panels. I have 24 on my roof. Had them for 5 years. Very happy, especially these days when I have to run everything from home constantly. It's been a blessing. Nick, let's see if we can get through your introduction this time.
Yeah, sorry.
No worries.
As I mentioned, I'm in Vermont, so our high-speed internet infrastructure is not quite as well developed as in DC. My name's Nick Behoon. I'm I manage regulatory affairs and utility interconnection at New Columbia Solar, which is a DC-based solar developer focusing kind of on commercial and industrial solar installation, and a large grantee of the district's Solar for All program. So we do a lot of community solar and a lot of community solar that benefits low to moderate income DC residents. And I, like I said, I'm a CREF subscriber myself, a community solar subscriber through Arcadia Power. It's an array in Northeast DC that I helped to build with New Columbia Solar. Great to be here.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Like I said, the Solar Action Team meeting, as Dina mentioned earlier, we started meeting right before the shutdown order. So we've been trying to go online and just work on the policy issues that are affecting DC. So tonight we actually have 3 speakers. David Rotman, who, as you heard, helped increase the offset limit sizes in DC, and we're going to start with him in a little while. We have Chris Randall from the Public Service Commission that's going to talk about energy affordability, which is an important topic these days. COVID, we're all working from home, we're all using more energy, and anything that we can do to reduce that burden is definitely welcome. So Chris is going to talk about that. And then Nick is going to talk about what are the cases going on at the PSC right now that we need to pay attention to. And I'll wrap it up with both the DC Solar Purchase Group and the events of the National Solar Tour. We have been co-hosting the National Solar Tour for how many years now, Alexis? 3 almost? I think. Yeah, 3 years now in conjunction with ACES. And this year we're going entirely virtual. So, but we're actually, the solar tour is going to take place in about a week. So I'll discuss that later. And then we're going to wrap up with volunteers and leading campaigns on policy issues in the district. So thank you all. And we'll start with David. So like I was saying earlier, David was instrumental in increasing offset limit sizes in DC. Before a few weeks ago, if you wanted to go solar in the district, you could not exceed 100% of your historical energy use. And with the district having some of the highest SREC prices in the nation, the folks that had enough roof space to put in large systems really wanted to take advantage of that. But PEPCO was capping them to 100%, unlike our neighbor states in Maryland and Virginia, which have a little bit of a higher limit. So David did not take no for an answer and persevered through a lot of meetings and paperwork and hearings and got the system increased. I think, was it official last week?
Last week or so, maybe 2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah,
like
a week or two ago, it is now 125% increase.
120.
So 120, and it's going to go up 25% every year for the next 4 or 5 years until it's 200% offset. So David, walk us through
what would you
that.
like me to do? Do you want me to tell a 5-minute version of my story and then a few thoughts? Okay.
Yeah, then we'll open up the floor.
Yeah, so I think probably I wouldn't be here if it weren't for DC Sun, because I think it was DC Sun that 10 years ago got some subsidies enacted within DC for solar and really started the solar momentum in the district. And I was part of that. So in 2010, I put up my first set of panels. And then I had technical problems. A lot of the microinverters were failing. That's another story. Not bitter about that, because I feel like we receive subsidies to be at the bleeding edge of the technology and to push the learning curves along, and that's okay. So I had enough trouble that I decided I wanted to exercise the buyback clause in my original installation contract, which I had forgotten but rediscovered, and get a new set of panels. So I went through that process about 3 years ago. And when I was getting bids the second time around, and I was asking people, can I make it bigger this time? How far can I go? Because I just wanted to push the limit, and panels have gotten more efficient, so my roof could produce more. And I guess I got a couple quotes, and I got different answers from different people about how big I could go, 100%, 125%, this many kilowatts. And I realized that there wasn't a clear answer, and I took that as a signal that there was something to dig into. And I did mention that I am a career researcher. This is what I do. I dig into topics and I investigate as deeply as I can, and then come out and explain to everybody what I figured out. And as I reflect on it, I think, especially with events this year, I realized part of what was going on with me is just that I have had a huge amount of agency in my life. White, straight, male. There's just barriers that I never experienced that other people might. I'm well educated, I'm quantitative, so I can understand most technical things when I put my mind to it. And so I've had a life where when I push things against limits, I generally get what I want. And I think that was part of that there. Just like, these people are telling me I can't do something I want to do, I'm going to fight. And there was no fear reaction to that notion. So I started researching and calling people, trying to figure out what is the limit. I called people at the PSC. Eventually I did get some callbacks. I talked to people, left messages at PEPCO. The first line customer service couldn't really tell me. Their boss could eventually tell me, but it took them a while to call me back. It was this kind of digging process. And what I eventually found was that there was no hard limit in our regulations and our laws. The law, which was enacted in 1999, says that a net metering system, like most solar homes are, residential rooftop solar is, the system must be intended primarily for own use. That's what it says. That's the definition. And I thought, well, if I go over by 50%, then 100 out of 150% of my production is still for my own use. That's 2/3. That sounds like intended primarily. So why are they telling me I can't do this? Then I had to spend a lot of time looking through all the documents, looking at the paper trail for how that law 15 years ago, 20 years ago, was translated into regulations through various processes at the PSC. And I found them debating this very question about how this phrase should be quantified, and there was back and forth, and they eventually decided not to. So our rules didn't have any quantification. Meanwhile, I learned that Maryland has the same definition of a net metering customer generator, intended primarily. But their regulator, their PSC, had said, well, that means 200% is the maximum. The idea being, if you go just shy of 200%, if you go to 199%, then just barely half of your solar production is for your own use. And that's intended primarily. That was the Maryland regulator's argument. So I realized we're in a situation where if you crossed Eastern Avenue, you got the same utility, same law, but twice the limit. And that didn't seem to make sense. And so I learned, again, learning about all this as I went. There's no teacher except the internet. I filed an informal complaint to the PSC. I guess I don't know how I learned about that process, but somebody at the PSC must have explained it to me. And I said, PEPCO's blocking me when they shouldn't, and that didn't go anywhere. The people at the informal complaint hearing didn't know how to deal with me. They said, you should file a formal complaint. So I did that, and I learned about that process. And the Office of the People's Counsel. I didn't know it existed. It's an agency whose job it is to represent consumers in disputes with PEPCO. It represented me. I had a lawyer. There was a hearing. It wasn't like on TV. It was just a conference room at the PSC. And we argued a bit. I argued with the PEPCO lawyer, Andrea Harper. And eventually, the hearing officer decided against me. He found a couple references in past PSC orders that didn't actually say intended primarily means 100% limit, but were written as if that had been previously decided. And that was precedent. And so I figured it wasn't worth pursuing that case anymore. But the opposing lawyer, Andrea Harper, said, there's a regulatory proceeding, which I didn't really understand what that was, where you could file a comment about this issue. And the deadline is May 31st. This was 2 years ago. So I took her cue and I tried to write something that looked like all those documents they file at the PSC, the same font and everything, and made my best argument. And happened to notice a few months later that the PSC had noticed what I'd written and asked a working group that was already getting started, I think because of DC Sun, to add this to its agenda. I should say that when I filed my comment, I also shared what was going on with on the DC Sun listserv. to encourage other people to second my comment. So it wasn't just me acting solo. I was trying to think about ways to work with other people to make this happen. And so I learned that there was a working group starting up, and that technically anybody in the city can come to the working group and participate in its meetings. In fact, usually that doesn't happen. Nick was present for the meetings and was a hugely important voice. I can't emphasize that enough, mostly focusing on separate issues from what I had raised. And so over the course of a couple of years, there was some back and forth. I think a really important fact was that PEPCO actually didn't seem to be that opposed to this change. And I'm not certain why. Nick or somebody else might have insight. I think if PEPCO had come into the room and really put up the strongest fight it could, that this would endanger the stability of the system or something like this, then my sort of analytical, technocratic approach might not have been sufficient. I was just analyzing the problem as well as I could and explaining to everybody and trying to make my best case, you know, in a sort of naive way, you might say. If it had gotten much more political, then my approach might have just been swept aside, and you know, the more emphatic and politically savvy approach, say, of DC Sun or other advocacy groups might have been needed. I don't know. So that's one reason I hesitate to call myself a hero. It was like I marched up to the doors of the city hall and they just opened for me. It's kind of how it was. I mean, there was some argument, and PEPCO did some hand waving about how it could create, you know, endanger the stability of the system, but I argued back, and they didn't. And that was pretty much it. Actually, I think the most resistance to change did not come from PEPCO, but from the PSC. The staff whose job it was to sort of, you know, support this process were concerned about both a couple of things. One was that if people could start generating a lot more power than they could consume and sell it at the retail rate, that could create some inequities. It might mean that people like me would be getting the use of the electricity distribution system for free, which means other people will be paying for my electricity system. And maybe those people would be poorer than me. So there were some equity issues there. They were also, I think the PSC staff was also concerned about, you know, whether there could be an engineering issue, transformers might get overloaded and stuff like this. But then there came a day when the District Department of Energy, so I think actually the PSC staff proposed raising the limit to 120%. And I said, you know, we got a climate crisis. We have an aggressive climate law in this city. That just looks like doing the minimum necessary. It doesn't look like what's appropriate. So when the District Department of Energy proposed that we ramp it up over 5 years from 100 to 200%, I just said, I agree, I support that. And I think that created a sense of momentum within the group. And at that point, a consensus crystallized. So I found myself thinking about when to argue solo and when to try to collaborate and build coalitions with others. And so it eventually went through. I mean, I'm leaving out details, but it on the one hand was a very long technical analytical process. On the other hand, it was very interesting for me to think about how to work with others to make change.
Thank you for that, David. I wanted David to share his story to sort of like the point of what this Solar Action Team meeting is like that volunteer and activism, how real folks, not just those of us that our policy want, can actually affect change if we put our minds to it and stick to the process. So I'm going to open up the floor to questions. If anybody has any questions for David, please go ahead. Nina?
Yeah, great presentation, and it was just recorded.
Oh, good.
If you haven't had this written out in interview form or maybe even podcast form, I think you could use this recording with absolutely no editing. And I very much encourage, I don't know if it's DC Sun property, but DC Sun could add it to their web videos, and maybe also allow it to go into some sort of, well, we were talking to a gentleman here who does podcasts, and I can't see Ronald, but and maybe it's not appropriate for those, you know, those particular fora, but Anyway, I just encourage very strongly that it go out as is.
Sina,
Thanks,
I've
Sina.
already
Mhm.
done a podcast on David Rodman. He didn't know anything about it, but I've already done a show on him. DC citizens win increase in net metering, limit to 200% past usage. Author William Driscoll published 8/12 TV magazine. So we
Awesome.
did the
Yeah.
show already.
Yeah, great.
And I didn't know him personally, so I reached out for Mr. Harvey Bullitt with iSpun Solar, the owner.
Mhm.
But the problem I had with the whole situation was great work, but what's a fair return? Now, recently, Neighborhoods United was really the pit bull who sounded the alarm around the petition that was filed with the Federal Regulatory Commission concerning net metering. And the whole thing was for the local states and municipalities to keep control over deciding whether you could get a fair return on your investment. But if Pepco only has to pay DC ratepayers a wholesale price, is that fair? So that's the question I couldn't get answered, because I don't know what is considered fair. Maybe Mr. Rodman didn't need the return on for those credits, but you take someone who may be qualified for the Solar for All program, and after 5 years those credits convert over to them, they may need that. So what's a fair return if Pepco only has to pay DC ratepayers a wholesale rate? It's the same way as being in a regulated market where people are left when they're trying to make large-scale projects bankable. If you can't get but a wholesale price, 2 cents behind the meter or 3 cents, you can't even make that project bankable to even finance the deal. So what's a fair return? That's my question.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, David, if you have an answer for that, because I don't think I do.
No, this is a really important question, and you know, my little fight was all about quantity, but that's totally interrelated with price. I would say a few things. In DC, as somebody said, I think Yesenia said, you know, the SREC price is really high.
No question.
Yeah, so I mean, I know it can be complicated in some cases. If you're a straightforward, you know, solar homeowner like me, that's actually where the most of the money comes from. If you're doing something more complicated where you are participating in solar, but you're not directly getting the SRECs because there's an intermediary that's financing and stuff, then in principle, you still should be benefiting from the SRECs unless you're getting ripped off. Like if somebody is installing solar on your roof and getting the SRECs, hopefully that's passing through to you in a lower or even a free price. So the economic benefit is still there. So for example, for me, you know, just increasing the size of my system with the SRECs alone is enough. Another thing I'd say is that the difference, I don't think is that huge. It's like, I don't know, 15 or 20% between wholesale and resale, wholesale and retail, like 2 cents a kilowatt hour.
Yeah, I think retail is DC residents are paying between 8 and 9 cents a kilowatt hour, and the buyback is 2 to 3 cents. The reason, and I don't know if Nick or Nina can confirm this, I think it's because it comes again to FERC. If you were to sell it back at retail price, that complicates who's a utility. And,
my understanding is a little different, but this is one of these things that's incredibly complicated. You can write PhD theses on this stuff. But another thing is, like, you know, how much a kilowatt hour is worth depends when it's produced and where it's produced, and how far ahead in time its production is promised, right? I promise you, it's like, you know, it's like oil, you know, or pork bellies. Like, if you promise to deliver it in 6 months, that's one thing. If you show up one day with unannounced and got a pork belly to sell, you're gonna get a different price. So the notion that there's a right price for electricity is actually pretty complicated. And so whatever system we use for pricing is going to be a real approximation of what we might think is ideal. As someone who is well off, you know, middle class and financially secure, I worry that if I were to receive retail, I would actually be getting too much. And I kind of mentioned that before, like, because the electricity distribution system, all the power lines and the transformers and everything is still benefiting me tremendously, right? If there's a blackout, or I'm sorry, if my panels die, the grid is there for me. If it's nighttime, the grid is there for me. If I produce a surplus, the grid is there for me. And if most of the way we pay for the electricity system, the local grid, is through the per kilowatt hour price rather than through a per month charge, and then I go negative on that, I may really be underpaying for something and then shifting that cost onto people who are less well off than me. That's what I worry about. It's different, of course, if you're lower income, but I'm just trying to suggest that it's actually pretty complicated, and it's not so obvious that wholesale is worse than retail, all things considered.
Any final questions for David before we move on to Chris?
I'll just, if I could, David kind of posed a question, and thanks, David. Again, really great kind of presentation and summary, and obviously your work on this was tremendous. David really led this effort in the working groups, and it's something we supported, kind of vehemently, but David did obviously a lot of the legwork and a lot of the advocacy. So it was great to partner with him on that in some respect. But David, you had said, why do you think that PEPCO didn't really push back on this proposal? And I have a couple of theories there, and I'm wondering, and others may have their own theories. I'd love to hear them. Here are my two theories, I suppose. One is the limiting factor in DC oftentimes isn't your bill. It's not going to be your load. It's going to be your roof. It's going to be it's our our flat roofed row houses that aren't going to be able to accommodate a system that's going to exceed usage by a tremendous amount. So from a residential standpoint, I don't think the utility is particularly concerned about that necessarily. If we had big lots and ground mounted arrays in people's front yards and all of that, they might start to get a little squeamish there. And they do to some degree in Maryland, perhaps in their areas where people can oversize systems, but they have it there already. And then obviously multifamily buildings, you're not going to be able to put a tremendously large system there. Perhaps there are some, churches with parking lots where now you're seeing kind of maybe some ground mounted or kind of canopy arrays and things like that. And a lot of our systems that we install are those types of systems. But we already had an ability to install those because we could always install them as community solar arrays. And there's no limit on the size of a community solar array aside from the kind of technical limits that they have in the small generator interconnection rules, on certain circuits, it's, 2 megawatts to 4, depending on where you are in relation to a substation. So those are my two theories, that they didn't really mind because we already had CREFs and we could size quite large systems, commercial systems through that avenue, and then the limiting factors for residential systems from the housing stock in DC. So that's what I kind of, in our discussions with them was always kind of had in the back of my mind. And for larger systems, if for those of you familiar with the CREF interconnection process, which was kind of the companion kind of process in the RM9 working group, it was kind of the RM40, the small generator interconnection working group that was rewriting those rules as well. PEPCO would much prefer essentially to allow you to install a net metered system because of the time and cost of designing and installing a CREF system that has, I believe, really weighs on them as well. So they they almost prefer, I think, NEM systems, NEM systems, net metered systems at this point. So those are my 2 cents on trying to answer that question. But I can't look into their, kind of their motivation completely.
Right. No, those ring true to me. I want to add 2 things to that. One is just thanks for the reminder. One reason I emphasize modesty about my supposed heroism is just that it's not that easy to get to 200%. I can get to maybe 100, 125 on my roof. It may be with time as panels get more and more efficient and as appliances get more and more efficient that people can push up against that ratio. And also there are bigger homes in parts of the city. So my thinking was I just want to push on every front that I can. This is my place to contribute. The other thing I wanted to say is to the extent that there was a tough political battle over getting CREFs enacted, and the fact that there was already precedent for installing larger systems, which reduced PEPCO's resistance to raising the limit on net metering systems, then that is a credit to other people who fought other battles before me.
Well, thank you all so much. That was a really good conversation. I am going to move forward with Kristen. So that, we're running out of time. And I will go ahead and share my screen. And once I do that, I can't see any of you, so let me know if you all can see it. Just 1 second.
Let me unmute myself. I almost forgot about that. And that was a really good conversation. And I think one of the things I have to say before is get with the PowerPoint is a lot of these conversations help us evolve what we're thinking, the products we put out. And so I'm here today to talk about energy affordability. As we're meeting virtually, we know we're doing so because COVID-19 has impacted our world and have changed a lot of really significant values in our life. There's a lot of people today that are unemployed who had a job right before this pandemic, and there's a lot of people today who are trying to make their bills work for them. They have missed a mortgage payment, they have missed a rent payment, and most likely they have missed a utility payment. Could you, next slide? Let me see.
Okay, sorry. Trying to, so there we go.
I'm sorry, we introduced me, so I'll skip past this. Next slide. As we mentioned before, when COVID-19 hit, the Public Service Commission, knowing that we are part of the affordability mix as in housing affordability, met, and we made sure of 3 important things: that those who were disconnected from utilities were reconnected, those who were struggling to afford were not disconnected, and that if you are having conversations of affordability, we would still be there to help you. Next slide. I'm going to rush through these because I heard. This is important. When government did not shut down, we started to operate from our houses. As you can see, I'm at my house, so we have my things. But in real time, customer support kept going. We figured out systems where our customers who were most in need, we were answering the phone calls in real time and trying to get them services that they needed. And a lot of people who are generally did not see themselves needing things like the utility discount program or bill pay or other methods of paying their bills really needed support at that time and needed to know that we were here. And so we enacted a couple methods to let people know that we existed. We have this Here to Help campaign, and Here to Help is a uniform program across several agencies in order to kind of do what a lot of us try to do best. We try to reach out to the community at a time that it's very difficult to do so. So it's the Public Service Commission, it's OPC, it's DCSEU, it's Department of Energy and Environment, and we're trying to make sure that our customers who are struggling to pay utility bills know we are here. The other portion of that is that we're trying to make people aware and educated about steps that they can take within their own home to reduce their utility bill. I've done a number of these presentations. I do them, and sometimes on the bill with me is Pepco, and they talk anecdotally about the number as people are home, their energy costs are going higher and higher at a time that they can least afford. So a couple of little tips that you can do to change that, we talk about that, and we offer these resources fully out and engage in promoting them strong in the community. Next slide, please. So as I talked to you about, and you have him here, Marie Smith, who's head of the the Office of Consumer Services, made a decision that we were going to keep everyone connected to our consumers. So a lot of people were scared. A lot of people didn't know where to go. We are answering phone calls in real time. 202-626-5120. I want to say that for when you have it recorded online, and people can know where to go and where to call. Next slide. We talk about the customer support campaign, and that's Public Service Commission, Office of People's Counsel, Department of Energy, DC Sustainable Energy Utility, and the Mayor's Office. And that's a key component. People don't want to go to 5 different or 6 different locations to find one answer or one support. When someone comes to the Public Service Commission, I know programs that are happening with the Department of Energy, the Office of People's Counsel, the DC Sustainable Energy Utility, and similar. So we meet regularly to make sure that, especially now during COVID, if they go out, they have my materials. If I go out, the few times we do, I have their materials. We're trying to make sure we have this concerted effort to give people information, especially right now that there's so many who need it. Next slide. So we talk about weatherization, and that's a big key to this. I had a long conversation with some policy professionals and experts, and what they have said, in regardless of any program that we put out, what is key is that people need to learn how to change behavior to reduce their energy consumption, and especially this time when we see bills are going up. And as you know, there could be 50 things under that checklist about how to prevent waste and how to make smarter purchases. But it's important for people to know that they have to, 1, do this, and 2, that there are community programs such as the Stay Cool program that DC Department of Energy has for seniors. Next slide. And these are our utility programs. So, and I'm going to say them. There's residential aid discounts at 30% off the utility bill, 25. The RES program, or we call that the Residential Essential Services, which is 25% off utility bills. The customer service program for DC Water, and the Lifeline service, which Lifeline Awareness Week is coming up pretty soon. Many people who are lost their jobs are now eligible to get these discounts. So a lot of people may not know that these they can get utility discounts from paying 20%, 30% over their utility bill. We're out there, we're making more efforts to let people know, and to let people know that these programs exist. Next slide. So the Aurora Management Program, and I like this program because this came about with several community conversations, people telling us that this is a big need. We met with the community for over 24 to 36 months to develop this from best practices that we saw in Massachusetts and around the country. It's the ability that if you have an outstanding bill out there, and I pitch this when I go to the Department of Health and Human Services and I talk to people who are transitioning from homelessness to housing. A lot of them have old utility bills that they just can't pay. This program may help them. So if they sign up to be part of the Arrears Management Program, if they pay on time, they will forgive portions of that debt. Next program. And next slide, sorry. And this is one of our newest programs, and I kind of like this one because it ties in with renewable energy and part of our retail choice. This is something we launched just 2 months ago. It's called DC Power Connect. It is where we offer this service as the commission, where you can, a website that you can go and you can search through our retail suppliers and see what their offers are for the day or for the week or how long they have it. It's a good program because when I go out into the field and people tell me, well, how am I able to trust these suppliers? Well, if they go to our site and they can see exactly what's in there, it's kind of like a X-ray for the offering. They can see how long it's offered. They can see if they have a renewable component to it. They see everything, and it's a great ability to get kind of more choice in the market. Next slide. Now, I'm going to skip this because I always have to answer the question of what is retail choice, but in this room, everybody kind of understands, and the distributed energy versus the standard operating service. So skip next slide. So this is our DC Power Connect site. It's a beautiful site. It's dcpowerconnect.com. I want to keep it up there when you post it on the website, because we have to encourage people to kind of look through and review what other options in utilities and retail choice there is. In addition to the standard offering, they do have retailers that offer renewable energy. They have retailers that might offer wind or solar. So this is a good option here. Next slide. And this is just an example, as you can see. You can see that there's one or two retail offerings where you can see the numbers, you can see the kilowatt hours, you can see if it's if it's a set contract versus a variable contract, if it has renewable, and you can decide to search only by if you wanted to see a renewable offering. You can search only if you wanted to see something cheaper by a standard offering. You have the ability to do search functions. Next slide. And we asked if you could, to keep up with us, to sign up for our newsletter and to stay informed by just signing up on our website. Next slide. And thank you. This is my contact information. You can email me you can give me a call at that phone number, and I hope to keep these conversations with you open. And as I always tell people, wear a mask. Thank you. Any questions?
Got one quick question, Christine. I'd like to get you on my podcast either for the September the 2nd or the 9th to talk about this new website the Public Service Commission's put up.
Okay. I'm a good speaker. Maurice is an awesome speaker on it. I will confirm with our office, but I'm always available to speak with you and come on your show.
No problem.
So I'll just have to round that back, and we'll talk in the chat.
I'll make sure you guys have each other's contact information. Thank you for that.
I have a question.
Yes.
It's called DC Power Connect, is that right?
That's correct.
I think it's a very nice site. But I did have one question when I was looking at it a few weeks ago. There's a bunch of companies offering 100% renewable power. And I got a little suspicious, maybe unnecessarily, and I wondered, who's verifying their claims? How do we actually know that they're doing that?
Yes, so one good thing for me is I have Carrie Hinton and Marie Smith here and to verify what I said, but one great thing, we have 2 locations on our website where you can look up retail suppliers. One is just a general list of everyone who is authorized to do this in DC. It's just the straight list of 200 and something. But if you choose to be on this website, you have affirmed that everything you are offering at the time that you have it on that site, you will stand behind. And that is something that the Office of OPED, I'm sorry to put it down into acronyms, the Office of OPED has confirmed. So they have to sign up for this particular site by confirming that everything that they put on that site, they will stand behind. They could stay on the other site. They're still listed as a retail supplier in DC, but once they go onto that portion of the site, they're saying, well, if I'm saying that I'm giving a 49-cent at this rate and 100% renewable, we have verified that. They are verifying that to their claim. Is that correct?
Let me just add to what Chris is saying. When Chris says OPAD, that's our Office of Policy and Development, who was instrumental in developing this site. The way the site works is that you can input certain factors that you'd like to see in your rate. And according, one of the sliders is the renewable percentages. Once you have determined there's somebody that you're interested in, this will direct you to the website or the contact information for that third-party supplier, where you would have the conversations that and I think it's a great question. You're like, okay, so how is this verified? The one thing that we do, as Chris alluded to, we hold the suppliers to the offers, the details of any offer that they list on this site. So you can't just, if somebody signs up under that, our site, the third-party supplier is held to that price and the details of that offer. But again, the particulars in terms of all the terms of the contract, that's something we encourage consumers to be aware of before they sign any offer with any supplier.
If I could just follow up on that, Maurice and Chris are correct. And I just add the point that if the commission is informed that there is a supplier that, as Chris indicated, had posted incorrect information regarding their rates, or if they have posted incorrect information about their use of renewable supply, then that's grounds for the commission to delete them from the website. And potentially, it could be grounds for a complaint by a consumer to be submitted to the commission and adjudicated by the commission. And of course, there's a variety of penalties that could ensue from that process. Let me also add the caveat that when a supplier says that they're 100% renewable electricity supply, that may mean that they are actually contracting with renewable generators through long-term power purchase agreements or some other fashion to actually acquire the electricity load from a specific supplier. However, it also may mean that they are purchasing enough RECs, or SRECs, or other RECs through the various markets to account for 100% of their supply. Because as we know, the electrons that are flowing through the proverbial Pepco pipes don't announce themselves as coming from a renewable generator or a fossil fuel generator. So there's no way to really account for that to an exact level of detail.
Thank you.
Sorry.
For the answers.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Nina. I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, thanks. I'm also very impressed by this presentation, and I hadn't heard it. And hats off to the way you presented as well as what you're doing. And what particularly caught my attention was this consortium that you put together of agencies dealing with various parts of the pie of complementary offerings for consumer bill pay protections and so on. And my knowledge, this is the first time that this has been done formally, and it's too bad that it takes a pandemic, but there's been a lot of talk about how DC, especially now with the Green Bank and some, a bunch of different financing options coming online in the district, about the importance of not necessarily a one-stop physical shop, but a collaborative approach to dealing with customers. So that, as you were saying, Chris, so they don't have to run around and figure out who's offering what incredibly inefficiently. So I hope that this effort can actually serve as a basis for future coordination or expanded coordination. I mean, maybe you've got the basics here. If it's not working, I mean, I never expect something like this to take off without bumps. You know, that's just life. And if you're doing something important, it's going to be tricky and it's going to have kinks to iron out. So I hope you're not discouraged by any kinks, and I hope you work at ironing them out. I think COVID will allow you the time to, unfortunately. But and then I would love to hear how it's working. Maybe 6 months from now. I can ask SEU the same question. And I'm on their advisory board, so they haven't talked about it. I think they should. You all have bragging rights here, and especially PSC for putting it together. And also to know if you're considering adding maybe other aspects of energy services for customers in the district. Thank you.
And thank you for saying that. I actually found that we had been, just to let you know, we had been meeting regularly, as Yesenia would say, we had been meeting regularly for months or almost years in order to kind of make sure collaboration happened. Because when someone is talking about energy or affordability or equity or solar or renewable, they may be talking to the Public Service Commission, but they just want to talk about solar renewable. They don't want to say, oh, they don't want to hear me say, oh, the person to talk to is over there at DCSEU. So we try to learn each other's programs. We try to be very flexible. We try to make sure that we are equally promoting and equally beneficial to both the taxpayer and the ratepayer, who are all our stakeholders. And some of these conversations formally, and I give credit and to OE and to OSC for standing that up, has happened because of COVID, but we're still meeting with some other agencies like Office of Tenant Advocate, Health and Human Services, to make sure that we can get to our ultimate target audience. So we're trying to make sure that the collaborations happen in broader scale and do more and more. And it's actually been easier since COVID. It seems like we are all trying to learn how to do this virtual space. So we're all trying to give each other some learning room to do so.
If I could follow up on Nina's question, because I think it's a very good one, and it is something that we certainly have learned a lot as we created the DC Power Connects website, the microsite specifically. Prior to that, which you may or may not be aware, we created our first microsite was to deal with utility scam issues. And that, of course, is accessible through our homepage for the commission. And that was a collaborative effort with others outside of the Public Service Commission. We worked quite a bit with, for example, with AARP in putting that together, and then doing some outreach in support of that. We now have a third initiative underway, and that is called Here to Help. We just recently got approval, frankly, this week for internal approval for providing funding to develop a microsite that will be associated with the Commission, DOEE, the SEU, and possibly other agencies. I don't recall off the top of my head who else we've been talking to. But that will provide hopefully a one-stop shop for the public to go to find out information about various types of assistance programs that Kristen has already mentioned, as well as other type of energy assistance financial support programs, such as Solar for All program that the SEU is administering. So we hope to have that operational up and running before the end of the year.
Thank you so much, Kristen. That was an awesome presentation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
I am going to move forward to Nick, talk about a couple of proceedings that are actually occurring at the PSC that may be of interest.
Sure, thanks, Yesenia. Tough acts to follow, and I'll try to keep this very short. I know we're running up against kind of our allotted time here, so I will keep it short. And I was glad to see that David was on the agenda today and was involved in the call because that rulemaking that allowed for that increased sizing of systems and that increased NEM cap was also bundled with the RM40 process, which was part of that working group, which was essentially a rewriting of the small generator interconnection rules. We were supposed to submit comments back in April or May, but PEPCO asked for an extension of the time before comments were to be submitted. That ended up happening July 15th. We've just gone through a round of reply comments to some of PEPCO's proposals in their initial RM40 comments. And I think there are other stakeholders that filed PEPCO, or sorry, that the commission ended up also, you know, as if we weren't dealing with enough, decided to also take on the advanced inverter standards in the district through this rulemaking and incorporating them into the small generator interconnection rules. Sorry, I don't want to put you on the spot, Nina, but I know you've been involved in that, and hopefully you can speak to it a little bit, Nina and her organization. And there were others that filed specifically on that aspect of the rulemaking. Yeah, I'll just summarize some of PEPCO's proposals that I think folks that care about the district's renewable portfolio standards, clean energy goals, or are just solar advocates or interested in solar and the environment and climate change, perhaps. Some things that they proposed, I think, are really detrimental to some of our goals, including making adding a customer charge to community solar customers and community solar generators, which would likely make those systems unaffordable for folks to subscribe to and for developers to build. And as I mentioned, through the Solar for All program, probably a large percentage of CREFs that were developed over the last year or two have been through the Solar for All program for low to moderate income DC residents, and those would, if that proposal moved forward, would essentially not be viable moving forward. They've also proposed to limit larger generators, larger DERs, larger solar projects, capping individual projects at 250 kW. And, you know, as I said before, no one's putting that on their roof, most likely, but there are some areas in the district where you can develop larger systems. And again, many of those larger systems are community solar systems. And again, many of those systems are Solar for All systems that are a cornerstone of the district's kind of clean energy goals and DOE's and the mayor's goals. Long story short, RM40, the reply comments were submitted on the 14th of August, and PEPCO has dropped a whole new standard on us that no one was really anticipating. I'm still pouring through it. I'm sorry. I know I'm meant to give a good update here, but I was out last week, and I'm still digging through it myself. Nina, could you mention anything? I hate to put you on the spot. Your take on it?
This I also applied to the advanced inverter issue. I'll just say this. The issues of putting a lot more solar, tying in microgrids, et cetera, using batteries, and having a grid that can incorporate these various resources and also interplay with them to manage the grid more efficiently and more cleanly. This is a brave new world that's being tested out throughout the world, actually, and in the US. And there are very few commissions and very few utilities who want to be in the vanguard of this. And partly because there are issues of reliability and safety and now cybersecurity that are involved. And being in the vanguard, regardless of the whole question of business model, is a very uncomfortable place to be. But there are states that are in the vanguard and have cut the paths. And some of us are eager for the district to be not necessarily in the vanguard, but a follower very close at hand. Then there's the issue of business models for the utilities, for the for-profit utilities. And their business models essentially really don't incentivize helping to bring a lot of local generation into the grid. This is a problem that commissions, regulators, and so on are dealing with everywhere. But the fact that there are a lot of issues of complexity, safety, cybersecurity, reliability involved, and that the business model aren't aligned with the 21st century needs, climate health needs, and affordability, and resiliency. That is not a reason not to forge ahead on all of this. Furthermore, technology is such, and again, the piloting of a lot of these new systems elsewhere is such, and the research being done, that we're no longer completely new at it. It's still very new and unsure, but we don't want a utility kind of waving the, sorry guys, security, cybersecurity, complexity, reliability, safety flag to constantly delay doing what we need to at least try to do. Similarly, the commission, the huge burden on a commission to suddenly have to take hold of this new knowledge, what's being done elsewhere, and to have the internal resources to be able to judge for themselves what's reasonable to try and what's too risky at this point. The role of civic organizations and of solar industry and other industry, battery industry, storage industry, is extremely important right now, as well as the national labs and those of us who can, like David, spend some time digging else to find out what's being done elsewhere and wave our hands, our own flags, and say, guys, yes, it's complex. We're not pretending to be engineers, but there are policy issues here that need to be advanced. And they're just as important as all the challenges that go into advancing them. So that's my comment, my overall comment, Nick.
Thanks, Nina. Yeah, I appreciate that. I just will mention one final regulatory proceeding, the RM29 process, which is dealing with cross-border feeders, so interconnecting solar systems to feeders that kind of tendril out into Maryland and qualify to be certified as eligible for DC SRECs. This was part of well, it was I think a shrewd part of original clean energy and RPS statutes, I think from 2011, that allowed for those types of interconnections as to not violate Article 2, Section 8 of the Constitution, you know, the dormant commerce clause that would allow just, you know, the district to only install and benefit from DERs within its borders. I'm getting out of my depth here, but this can be somewhat problematic. We've been talking a lot about SRECs and the SREC market and how solar owners, pay back their systems through those RECs. Most of the time, they're quite a high price. This rulemaking is meant to ensure that the market is preserved, those RECs remain valuable, and they're not overly diluted by those interconnections from relatively large systems in Maryland that they could install in one system essentially, what the district does in months and months and months, of interconnection. So that's just one final note, and I'll leave it there, conscious of time here.
Thanks, Nick. I just want to add why that's such an important issue. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a Maryland resident. My system generates about 10 credits a year. On the Maryland side of the border, those credits are $50 each, around 50 each right now. The DC side, if I was able to sell those into DC, we're talking $440 a credit. So instead of $500 a year, I would be looking at $4,500 a year. So it's a huge difference. But the reason that DC's SREC prices are so high, it's because the market has been closed to outside systems. If, like Nick said, we allow all these large Maryland systems to sell their SRECs into DC, that's going to devalue DC prices and make the return on investment in DC a little lower. And we do not want to see that happen in the district. So closing real quick because we have about 12 minutes left. As I mentioned, our business has helped people go solar. That's how we started 10 years ago. That is the bread and butter of what we do. We used to do this with co-ops here in the district where we would bring people together, have installers compete to work with them. That would lower the price. The last couple of years, we've seen that in DC, installers don't really need us as much anymore. There's still that customer interest. People still want to go solar, still want that help on going solar and trying to decipher all the different options and offers. But without installer competition, we felt that we couldn't really offer consumers what they needed in our traditional co-op model. So we are trying a new model in DC. It's a purchase group. So folks can still join as part of the group. You have private listserv, private emails. We have educational videos that are shared only with the group members. And they get to learn about what it means to go solar. We actually help you review your different proposals because we're no longer having installers compete, but you go out, you get your proposals, and we help you analyze those proposals so you can compare apples to apples. And Alexis was kind enough to share the link for the group. So if you would like to join the group, just send me an email. You go in the group. There is a charge for this one, but I can waive that fee if you need me to. So if you want to join the group, you want to experience what it's like to go solar, and have that support, especially when it comes to evaluating the different proposals, just send me an email or, yeah, and there's my email. Thank you, Alexis. We're really trying to see this different model, but help people as much as we can. Because again, our mission is to help educate folks about what it means to go solar and what to expect in the process. And lastly, I want to end with our National Solar Tour. As I mentioned at the very beginning, we are partnered again with ACES to create this National Solar Tour. It's been around for 25 years this year. And in the past, we would have people sign up and open their houses. Folks would come up to the house and talk to the homeowners about what it meant to go solar and what was it like, and ask any questions they had on going solar. Because of COVID, we are doing things a little different this year. So instead of having people run around, go house to house, we're actually doing video tours. So if you are a solar homeowner and are interested in participating and showcasing your solar system, You can reach out to either Alexis or I. We'll walk you through the process. We actually have a volunteer, ACES, A-S-E-S. Alexis, I can't remember what they stand for. The American Solar
Energy Society.
That's who they are. And they've been putting this, like I said, they've been putting the solar tour on for 25 years. We started partnering with them about 3 years ago. And basically, we're going digital this year. And not only do we have the digital solar tours, we actually have a whole week of programming around going solar. We have EV panels. We have chat with solar homeowners. Solar for small business, community solar, how to electrify high schools. I'm actually hosting a panel on solar equity. We're going to have experts that have been fighting for energy democracy all over the country, California, Detroit, Indiana, talk about their campaigns on making solar more accessible for everyone. So I encourage you to look at the website, sign up for the events. It's going to be an entire week of solar. It's not going to be all day seminars during the week. It's just going to be little workshops here and there. So it's not like you're going to spend the entire day in front of your computer. But I encourage you all to sign up to attend the tour events. And if you're a solar homeowner, please sign up to do one of our videos. Like I said, you can reach out to Alexis or myself. We'll give you talking points and a guide on how to create these videos. And if you need a volunteer to go and film your system, we also have a volunteer taking social distancing seriously and some COVID measures so that you don't have to worry. Any questions? I know that's a lot in a couple of minutes. Nina?
I've taken a lot of airtime, so if anybody else has a question, please go ahead. But quickly, are you dealing at all with battery storage, either standalone batteries or how electric vehicles can be used in tandem or might be used in tandem with solar, if they can?
I'm not sure. Do we have any battery events during the National Solar Tour, or is that part of the Solar Congress?
Yeah, as part of Solar Congress, so part 2.
So yeah, so the entire month of October, which is the following, we're actually, I don't know if any of you have been to our solar congresses. We used to host this once a year meeting, have solar advocates, homeowners, and experts come out and talk during the day. Again, COVID has changed a lot of our plans. So this year we're doing a whole month of events. We have some national programming on solar, battery, EVs, but we also have some state-specific programming throughout throughout the month. So there's the website. You can sign up. Again, these are not going to be all day long conferences. It's just going to be afternoon or lunch webinars. So feel free to join whenever you can. But our engagement team has been working really hard to put together some great programming at both the national and local levels, because we are now in 12 states and counting. So any other questions?
Hi, Yasina. This is Carrie again.
Hey, Carrie.
Can I add one other comment about another initiative at the commission that hasn't previously been mentioned?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. Now,
Thanks,
this is not, it's not specific to residential solar, but for those of us that are interested in solar issues in general, and I apologize, my video is still not working. I've checked my settings multiple times and I still can't figure out why it's not working with Zoom. It worked with Teams earlier today, but anyway, be that as it may. As some of you may know, the commission has been looking at the options associated with our standard offer service program, the SOS program, which is primarily used by residential customers. In fact, the majority of residential customers in the district purchase their energy supply through the SOS program, which is essentially the default program for those that don't select a competitive supplier. Of course, as Chris has very ably outlined, we have the DC Power Connect underway to encourage people to select on their own a alternative supplier and possibly someone that has a significant percentage, if not the total amount, coming from renewable resources. But there will still be a number of residential customers that will continue to rely on the default service. So the commission has been exploring the last 2 years the options that are available to assign a portion of that energy load that's purchased through competitive contracts for the SOS program. And we are anticipating that soon, meaning next month probably, we will be receiving a revised RFP from PEPCO that will enable 5% of that SOS load to be purchased from solar and onshore wind suppliers through a competitive bid process. That's a significant initiative on the part of the commission. There's not a single other state commission, and trust me, we have looked for other examples to try to copy from, but there's not a single other state commission that has taken this approach nationally. So hopefully, it will happen soon and it will go well.
Thanks so much for that update, Carrie. I really appreciate it. We will follow up with an email, so don't worry about the links or the emails. We'll send you a follow-up in the next day or two